These speakers, the KRK Rokit 7s, because they're one of the bigger ones, 5th generation, have led me to change my mind about something that I've taught students here at Digital DJ Tips for a long time when it comes to buying and using monitor speakers. More about that later though. For now then, let's talk through what they are, who they're for, why they might be good for you, where they fit into the market. I'll talk you through their features and then I'll move on to a few things that I think you should know about them. So obviously you can see from the size of these on my desk, these are too big for this room. This is a small room, it's a small studio. And also I've just got them on the desk. They're not actually properly mounted on stands or anything. I'll talk to you about all of that in a minute, but that's something you should bear in mind with this kind of monitor. For the purposes of this review, I've squashed everything into the shop, but you wouldn't have them set up like this normally, although it's not that bad actually, having listened to them in this position. But these are a big monitor. So these are a monitor speaker designed for medium-sized studios. You can actually see that the KRK, the iconic KRK yellow, has definitely been downgraded a bit on this one. It's a little bit of a dull yellow. It's a little bit of a, I don't know what you'd call it because I'm no interior designer or decorator, but I can tell you that that is not the bright yellow that we're used to. So they've obviously gone for a decision there to tone this down a little bit. This is a 7-inch woofer and it's got a 1-inch dome tweeter. And it's got the usual KRK logo there. It's actually front ported, which means that there's a hole in the front there to let the air move around. Some speakers like this have that hole at the back, which would mean they're probably a little bit more forgiving in the position that you put them in because they don't have to be quite a long way from a wall. Although this kind of speaker, as I say, does benefit from proper mounting. So when it comes to mounting these speakers, you can put them onto brackets. They've got the 4 holes in the bottom for the brackets. You could of course put them onto normal speaker stands. They've got a rubber base, a very thin rubber base, which they've kind of glued onto the bottom of them. But also they come with these foam stands here. And there's a couple of them, so you can have them as I've got them, so that they've both got the thin parts at the back and the thin and the thick parts at the front, so they're kind of angled up a little bit. Or you could flip them round, you could have them angled down a bit if you've got them on a higher shelf, or just level. I mean, they're okay. You can buy much nicer speaker foam inserts to go underneath them. However, they're pretty good. They do the job. They certainly make a big difference having them set up the way I've got them set up here in the studio. Each speaker weighs 17 kilograms. They are sold individually and they are wired individually. So you're going to need the left-hand cable from your DJ gear heading off to the left-hand speaker and the right-hand cable heading off to the right-hand speaker completely independently. They have their own independent power as well. So if you're new to this kind of monitor speaker, that's the way these kind of speakers work. And the construction is very similar to what we've got used to, not only with this brand, but with most brands that make this kind of big boxy speaker. About 17 kilograms each. They're MDF covered with slightly rounded corners and a little bit more rounding at the front. I want to show you around the back now though, because nowadays all the control on this speaker is via this panel here. Now this is similar to the one that was on the Generation 4 that came before it. However, there are a few changes that I want to talk you through. So if you haven't seen this kind of way of controlling a speaker before, let's just have a little look at how it works. You have a function knob that turns, so at the moment it's adjusting the level of the speaker, it's the volume in other words, but if you press in you get various other functions, and the main one we want to look at here is EQ. So EQ has got these 3 settings here that you can change. This is flat, which is where you set it if you were using them to produce with, so completely flat frequency response. This would be more, I would say, for video editing and so on, where your podcast editing even, where you need a boost somewhere in the middle so that you can hear dialogue and vocals well. However, the bass has been rounded off and the treble's been rounded off. Wouldn't sound good with music at all. And this is the interesting one. This is the general kind of setting. It's a forgiving setting. It's got a nice pleasing boost in the bass. And then down below here, it's got a kind of forgiving mid-range and then a little bit of tinkle added by turning the bass, the treble rather, up a little bit. This is the setting that you would probably use for DJing because it would just sound pretty good, and also for general listening. So you cycle through those there, but also as well as having the standard settings, you can go in and then tweak into each individual setting by boosting it a little bit, cutting it a little bit, shelving it and so on. So within each of those settings, there are a few other ways that you can mess around with it as well. The next thing here is the setup, and setup is just things like the backlight and contrast of this actual panel we're looking at. Whether the speakers stand by, that's quite cool because it means when you start playing music, they'll wake up. and you can turn the KRK logo on and off there as well. So how loud are they? And what do they sound like? Well, people often say when we make these videos, why don't you actually play them? Well, look, I have been playing them extensively. There ain't no point me playing you the speakers through a little microphone, which then comes out your phone or your laptop or wherever you're watching this. So you're going to have to take my word on it. I've played with all three of those EQs, and they are as I described. Flat is a flat frequency response. The one that gives you that kind of forgiving bass, mid-range and a bit more bass, does sound boomy and great for DJing, but you probably wouldn't use it for production. And the other one is very mid-range oriented. But the overall audio quality is great. You know, they've got big woofers, they've got the bass reflex in there, they've got a nice tweeter, they go therefore quite low and high with reasonably true frequency response, possibly a little bit missing in the low mids, possibly when you're in the most revealing flat mode. But look, these are a budget monitor. These are designed for people who are just getting into this kind of monitor speaker. They're loud, so I think they're about 120, 130 watts, although that's only a very rule of thumb way of thinking about volume. But trust me, we couldn't get them anywhere near what they're capable of here in this studio. We'd have had the whole building knocking on the door asking us to turn them down. They are a loudspeaker. They always have been a loudspeaker. That's why they're called Rokits. So I wouldn't worry too much about whether they go loud enough. But quality-wise, in their class, which is, you know, they're about £210, $270 euros. They're great value for money. For what you get, they sound fantastic. I certainly don't think that anyone who's, as I say, new to this kind of speaker would think that they're anything other than fantastic sounding. Certainly for DJing and for DJ producing, certainly in your first few years of DJ producing, you know, KRK themselves make a higher up range, which are more finessed, but they sound wonderful. Now, what is it that I've changed my mind about with these speakers? Well, I can give you a little clue by holding up this. This is something new with these speakers. So this is a front plate with a grill on it, both there and there. And the way this works is you can take off. These are very, very hard to take off because they're held on with very strong magnets, but you can take off that front panel because it's got these 4 magnets here. So now we're looking at the speaker without that panel on, and we can click in place of it, this one. And that has converted the speaker into a speaker that, in a place where kids might poke pencils into them, the public might poke beer mats into them or fall into them or whatever, the delicate parts are completely safe. And one thing we've never, ever recommended anyone do when they ask us this question is use speakers like this in public situations. In other words, hey, I'm playing a small party, can I take my studio monitors? The reasons are several-fold. One, they're not made for it. They're made for near field monitoring. You're meant to be quite near to the speaker, so you're going to get the best sound in that position. Two, they're not made for it in that the delicate parts are exposed. And three, generally with speakers that are really driven very hard for a long time, with people, you know, getting drunk and turning their DJ gear up really loud, unless the DSPs are very good, they might actually end up getting damaged. DSP is the digital signal processor within the speaker. But those things are changing. These have got DSPs in, so they're going to be very hard to damage just by pushing an awful lot of volume into them. These have now got a grill so that they're protected. And yes, they, in theory, are going to sound better when you're close to them, but they're still going to sound pretty good, as long as they're high up enough, at kind of head height, when you are further away from them. You can get a subwoofer that goes with them as well. And these two with a subwoofer would make any reasonable sized room sound pretty damn good. And if you have 20 people in there having a little party, I don't honestly think you'd come to any harm. And that's very different advice to what we've always given to DJs. When it comes to monitor speakers, we've always been very clear, leave your monitors at home, use something that's made for the job when you're playing at parties. But look, I wouldn't take them on the road with me. I wouldn't use them in a mobile DJ environment or anything, but as maybe monitor speakers in a DJ booth, or as speakers that you just crank up at home and get a few friends around. Stick this grill on, and I think you're good to go. So yeah, a slight definite change in the advice I'm giving there. It's actually the second speaker I've seen that does this, the Unit 4 from III, which we've reviewed recently, a much smaller speaker, but nonetheless, they also come with a grill that can clip on to allow you to use them in micro public environments, if you like. So these are the KRK, these are the 7-inch versions, so these are the KRK Rokit 7s, 5th generation. They are de-amplified, and this is the final point I want to make, because Earlier KRKs, not the 4s, the 4s were also de-amplified, but the classics, the 3s that came before, were AB amplified. What that means is that the amplifiers in them are a different design to the ones that they're using nowadays. It's a more modern design nowadays, doesn't get as hot. But some people think that the Class AB amplifiers sound better. So if you actually don't really care for all this stuff around the back that we were looking at, and you just want a very basic monitor in this style made by this company, you can still buy the Generation 3s. KRK still sell them. Might just be worth looking at those because they're an AB amplified, simpler speaker than this. But look, these are D. They've got the built-in DSPs, which make them sound really nice anyway. As you can see, they're quite tweakable. But these cones that come with them especially, yes, I mean, it's nice that they've given you the foam underneath so you can position them a bit. But these cone covers, these clip-on baffles, definitely change the game and make them a little bit more useful than they were before. Other than that though, it's business as usual for them. If you're after a big mid-sized room monitor and you're going to go all the way and get separate ones which are individually powered and so on like these, then they're really good value for money for what you get. They are the KRK Rokit 7s. This is the Generation 5 and this has been the Digital DJ Tips review of them. If you've enjoyed this, do subscribe to the channel, but more importantly, click the link underneath and become a free member of the world's leading online DJ school. I'm Phil Morse. Hope you've enjoyed it. Get good, get out there, make the moments, and we'll see you again very soon.